Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're taking a deep, visual dive right into the gritty, fiery heart of industrial America. We're stepping down, way down, into the suffocating soot and roaring furnaces of the early 20th century to look at Eugene O'Neill's 1922 theatrical masterpiece, The Hairy Ape. Now, this isn't just a simple story about a ship's coal stoker. No, it's this profound, deeply unsettling descent into alienation, fractured identity, and the brutal, grinding machinery of the modern world. It really forces us to look at the true human cost of progress. So let's jump right in.
We kick things off with a deafening roar straight from the belly of a transatlantic ocean liner. I'm the end. I'm the start. I start something and the world moves. That's Robert Smith speaking. Or, as he's better known, Yank. Yank is a mighty stoker, and he is just completely engulfed in the absolute chaos of the stokehole. I mean, picture it, glowing red coals lighting up these sweat-slicked bodies, the air incredibly thick with coal dust, and that relentless, deafening rhythm of the ship's engines. Yank genuinely believes he's the physical embodiment of this capitalist machine. He feels like he inherently belongs in that fire. He literally thinks he is the steel, he is the power. It's this massive, intoxicating display of hubris. And as we're going to see, it's a super precarious position to hold when the world suddenly shifts around you.
Section 1. The Expressionist Everyman.
Okay, so to truly get how O'Neill is telling the story, we've got to understand the style of the play. Expressionism is this theatrical style that intentionally throws realistic, naturalistic details right out the window, replacing them with distorted, highly exaggerated images. Why? To aggressively express intense, subjective emotion. O'Neill actually borrowed this technique from German theater to literally force us, the audience, to see the world entirely through Yank's distorted psychological lens. So instead of normal, realistic people, the play basically assaults you with essentialized emotions, jarring, cacophonous sounds, and exaggerated character types who act way more like grotesque masks than actual human beings. It's a total immersive dive into one man's fracturing psyche.
Section 2. Steel and Social Darwinism. Let's look at the environment.
O'Neill sets up this stark, incredibly visual contrast between two completely disconnected worlds that share the exact same ship. Down below, you've got the stokehole. It's a fiery, claustrophobic inferno of black coal and red flame, packed with these muscular, sweat-drenched working-class men who are essentially feeding their own life force into the engines. But then, up above, you have the upper deck, representing the wealthy bourgeoisie. O'Neill intentionally describes this world as anemic and glaringly white. It's sterile, totally artificial, and completely lacks the raw, pulsing energy of the guys down below. These two worlds are physically and socially walled off, yet, and here's the kicker, the black soot and sweat from the bottom literally fuels the pristine white existence up top.
And then, these two worlds violently collide. Mildred Douglas, she's the daughter of a wealthy steel tycoon, decides she wants to go slumming down into the stokehole, just to see how the other half lives. She walks in dressed immaculately, entirely in white, looking like a pale ghost hovering in all that thick coal dust. And when she sees Yank, blackened and sweating, aggressively raging with his shovel, she is absolutely terrified. She cries out, "Oh, the filthy beast," and actually faints on the spot before being carried away. This right here, this is the inciting incident of the play. For Yank, this isn't just some passing social insult. It is a profound, deeply personal violation that completely shatters his worldview. In a split second, he realizes the people who own the steel don't see him as the all-powerful engine of the world. They just see him as a caged animal.
Section 3. The Existential Crisis.
Following that catastrophic run-in, we start seeing Yank repeatedly sitting in the exact physical pose of Auguste Rodin's famous sculpture, The Thinker. It's such a brilliant way to visually show his internal struggle. Here's a man known entirely for his brute, unthinking physical strength, and he's desperately twisting himself into knots trying to think, trying to achieve a higher level of consciousness. He's literally trying to reason his way out of an impressive, crushing system that only values him for his muscle mass. It's a really tragic image, A man painfully trying to awaken his mind in a society that flat out refuses to acknowledge he even has one.
All this grueling attempting to think leads us right to the core existential question of the play. Where do I belong? Scholars actually bring Sartrean philosophy into this quite a bit. Think about it. Yank starts out with this unquestioned, powerful sense of belonging in the stokehole, living comfortably in what Jean-Paul Sartre would call bad faith. But once Mildred shatters that comforting illusion, he's violently thrown into the terrifying freedom and acute isolation of having to define his own existence from scratch. He realizes for sure he doesn't belong with the wealthy elite, but suddenly he also feels profoundly alienated from his fellow working-class stokers. He is just entirely adrift in the modern world.
Section 4. Cages, Apes, and Symbols.
So let's take a look at the underlying structure of the play itself, which is super important. The Hairy Ape is broken down into 8 distinct, fast-paced scenes. And literally scholars love to point out how this journey actually subtly mirrors the Catholic Stations of the Cross. It's a literal, agonizing journey toward death. We start on the massive ocean liner. Then we move to the wealthy, untouchable enclave of Fifth Avenue. From there to a freezing jail on Blackwell's Island. Next up, a local office of the IWW, labor union. And finally, we end up at the city zoo. At every single station, Yank faces absolute rejection. He's this desperate man searching for communion, but all he finds are locked doors and cold shoulders. And those locked doors are vividly represented by the evolution of cages throughout the story. Yank's environment is constantly shifting just to trap him. He starts in the ocean liner stokehole, a literal cage of relentless heat and endless labor. Up on Fifth Avenue, he's trapped by his own absolute invisibility. The wealthy churchgoers don't even physically register it when he tries to violently bump into them. Then he's thrown into an actual jail cell. There's this visceral moment where he bends the cold steel bars in a blind rage, and it hits him. The very material he proudly claimed to command is now mocking him. It's holding him captive. Later, he tries to join the IWW thinking they blow up steel plants, but they just reject him as a dangerous provocateur. And finally, his tragic journey leads him to a literal gorilla cage. The steel he was once so fiercely proud of, it's become his ultimate, inescapable trap.
Section 5. A Tragic Belonging.
Yank eventually finds himself entirely alone at the Central Park Zoo, just standing quietly outside the gorilla enclosure, in the dark. And in what is undoubtedly the most poignant, heartbreaking moment of the whole play, he delivers this extended, intimate monologue to the beast. He softly asks, "Ain't we both members of the same club, the Hairy Apes?" He recognizes this deep, shared oppression. He feels a profound kinship with this caged animal that he just couldn't find with the wealthy elites or even with his fellow workers. For the first time, he finally feels understood by something that's been equally displaced and ripped away from nature by the modern world.
In a final, desperate attempt to forge a real connection, to finally break down those physical and metaphorical barriers separating him from the world, Yank actually unlocks the heavy steel cage. He steps inside and offers to shake the gorilla's hand as an equal. But, well, the animal doesn't understand. The stark, brutal, physical reality of the situation just takes over instantly. The climax is absolutely horrifying. The gorilla wraps Yank in a violent, uncomprehending, murderous hug, effortlessly crushing his ribs with sheer animal strength. That delusion Yank held onto, that he was a man of unbreakable steel, is shattered right along with his bones. The beast then casually tosses his broken body into a dark corner of the cage before just wandering out into the sleeping city.
As Yank lays dying alone in that cage, broken by the very beast society equated him with, O'Neill leaves us with a deeply haunting final stage direction. Perhaps the Hairy Ape at last belongs. It is a remarkably dark, cynical, yet incredibly powerful ending. Yank's relentless, agonizing quest for identity and belonging brings him absolutely no comfort on Earth. He only finds peace, or, at least a quiet end to his suffering, in the absolute void of non-being. The tragic irony here is just profound. To finally find rest, he had to be physically destroyed by the animal he was compared to, while locked inside a cage made of the very steel he used to worship. Which leaves us with this final, provocative thought. In a heavily mechanized world that constantly values profit and industry over human lives, who are the true beasts, and who is merely trapped in the cage? Is it the worker, steadily stripped of their humanity and connection to nature, treated like a totally disposable machine part? Or is it the worker class, so utterly disconnected from life, struggle, and reality that they've basically become empty, gaudy marionettes? O'Neill's masterpiece really challenges us to fiercely reflect on the brutal realities of social Darwinism, the fracturing of identity, and the severe human cost of unchecked industrial progress. These are big questions that honestly still resonate just as deeply with us today. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer of the Hairy Ape.